AIDS. Here in Uganda, we have always commemorated this day, and a lot of activities are held to reflect on the disease and see what more can be done in as far as fighting it is concerned. So we have a special edition of a talk show here. Yes, much as we had one on Friday, we shall have another one discussing HIV, but this one is in so much a special way to get to understand more about the disease and how the World AIDS Day 2019 is special. What is special about the day and how can you be involved, what your role could be. So welcome aboard. My name is Michael Jordan Lukomwa. My guest is Dr. Byamuka Madan. He's the head of HIV prevention from the Uganda AIDS Commission. Doctor, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
How is your evening?
Very well.
Okay. We'll start right. I think we have the best person to talk to at this kind of a time, the head of HIV prevention at the Uganda AIDS Commission. How would you describe our HIV status nationally at this time as we move towards the World AIDS Day 2019? How are we?
Thank you. The state of the HIV in the country is mixed. There are good news here, and there are not very good news.
Okay.
I will start with the good news. The good news is that we currently estimate there are like 1.4 million living with HIV in the country.
1.4 million people.
1.4 million. The good news is that out of those, we have around 1.2 million already on HIV treatment. This is good news in a sense that when people are started on HIV treatment, their chance of transmitting HIV to their partners, to their unborn babies is significantly reduced. So HIV treatment is one of the key prevention strategies we have in the country. If we could get everybody who is HIV positive on treatment, we would significantly reduce the risk of HIV transmission in the country.
Doctor, break that down a little. If I am HIV positive,
yes,
God forbid,
yes,
and I start treatment,
yes,
what makes my capacity to transmit it reduce?
When you are on HIV treatment, the treatment helps reduce the multiplication. The viruses in the body are not giving birth at a high rate.
Okay.
So I can use an analogy. If you have a tank of water with frogs, small frogs, and you have to scoop out water. If there are so many frogs in the tank, your chance of scooping out a frog is so high. If it's a big tank and there are one or two frogs, most likely they are on the floor of the tank, your chance of scooping water with a frog, without a frog, is high. So when people are taking ARVs, and they are taking them very well, they reach a state we call undetectable. We cannot detect the viruses in their body. If they reach that stage, their chance of transmitting the virus is equally undetectable. It is not there. So we would encourage that we support all our countrymen and women who are HIV positive to come and start treatment. It's our duty as a community. It helps you, it helps me to support a workmate, a family member, to make sure we encourage them and support them to come for HIV treatment, because if they are on treatment and they are taking it very well, the chance that they will transmit HIV to your future wife, I see you are not yet married, or to your sister, is significantly reduced.
In our ordinary understanding,
yes,
can an HIV-free body,
yes,
okay, can an HIV-infected body,
yes,
get into contact with a free body?
Yes.
And because it is on treatment,
yes,
and it doesn't transmit
very much. If the person who is HIV positive has been taking his drugs, the drugs we call ARVs, if he's taking them very well, and he has attained that status we call undetectable, which means when we test the blood, we cannot see the viruses jumping around, that person will not transmit HIV to other people. Okay. So the good news is that more than close to 90% of our people who are HIV infected are already on treatment. and most of them are adhering, taking their drugs as the doctor advises. Most of them are undetectable. So we believe that is significantly good news.
Okay.
We have other good news. We see men in communities taking up circumcision. Circumcision is one of the good tools we have that reduces, it does not eliminate, it does not make you bulletproof. But we see men, our target is to circumcise around 1 man every year. But we come close that, we come close to 800,000. So to us,
target 1 million
1
men.
million. If we reached 1 million men circumcised in a year, would be satisfied that we are progressing well to finish HIV. Our goal is to end HIV, end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. To get there, circumcise at least 1 million men per year. Every year we see we come close to that, which means Ugandans are coming in. But there are some other not so good news. I will highlight 2 examples.
Okay.
The first one is on...
Before that, still we'll give a second to the other one. What does circumcision do? I want every viewer to understand you.
Circumcision does several things. Number one, there are special cells. When HIV is entering somebody's body, it attaches to certain special cells in the body. Those cells are in high numbers in the foreskin of all parts of the man's body. Circumcision is protective to the man. It is not protective to the woman directly.
Okay.
So when you remove this foreskin, you have removed the parts of the body where those cells, where HIV, the virus likes. To enter the body, it must attach certain cells, then it multiplies going inside. So those cells where the virus attaches are in the foreskin. It's the main part with most cells. So when we remove the foreskin, we have removed the highest concentration of those cells where the virus attaches to enter the body.
Okay.
There are some other mechanisms, including that some people who are circumcised, they are also less likely going to contract other STIs. They are hygienic. People who contract other sexually transmitted infections are at an increased risk of contracting HIV. So there are so many other indirect mechanisms of how circumcision, but at a broad level, we say that circumcision reduces your risk by 60%.
Okay.
So it's a good tool. When we look geographically, we find that communities which are circumcising, they're doing much better than us in reducing HIV.
Okay.
And we notice men in Uganda are taking up circumcision. It is other good news. But as I was saying,
You had started
there are
that
some
news we
not
wouldn't
so
love
good
to
news. The not so good news, number one, is about information. Having enough knowledge to protect oneself from contracting HIV. Having enough knowledge such that when you contract HIV, we do not say it's because he didn't know. So we call it comprehensive knowledge. We notice that with comprehensive knowledge, we have not reached so far. Since we started educating people on HIV, yes, we have been improving. Since 2000, comprehensive knowledge was in the 20%. Find people, a proportion of the population who have real knowledge that you say this person would not contract HIV because they're ignorant. It has increased, but it has not reached 50%, which means maximum 50% women in our country have enough knowledge not to contract HIV because they were ignorant. Another 50% do not have enough knowledge. They are at risk of contracting HIV because they did not know something. They are at risk of transmitting HIV because there's something they didn't know. So that calls for continued community education.
Yes.
The challenge is we noticed that in the early years, in the 1990s, in the late 80s, there were so many troops who were moving around educating the people. But we see as a challenge, these troops have become silent. The church leaders are not really coming forward to teach people about HIV. The political leaders are not coming forward as they used to when we were young men in the 90s. They are not playing their role. And as such, there is an assumption that people know, but people do not know. We are not even 50% of the population who have enough information to prevent themselves from contracting HIV. So this calls for continued continued education
Yes.
of the people. We shouldn't get tired. There is a false assumption that people know, people don't know. The second thing that I think would not be going well is on behavior. We notice that over time, people have given up, are engaging in behaviors that put them at risk, including extramarital affairs, multiple sexual partnerships. We see as a population, we are getting back to business as usual. People are having more sexual partners, people are engaging in extramarital affairs, yet the other behavior that would help people with such risky behaviors to protect themselves from contracting HIV is condom use. We often talk about condom use. Yes, we see there's a trend that has been increased in condom use among unmarried men. But what is shocking is that married men, the number of married men who are engaging in extramarital affairs has increased over time, but the number of married men or even married women remember to use a condom every time they engage in an extramarital affair has not increased.
Doctor, how do you guys get to know this?
We get to know this by asking the people. Every period,
So these
certain
people
time.
tell you.
Absolutely. We come down to the community. We go across the country. We are asking people by age group.
So somebody tells you,
course, people tell
I
us.
had sex
Yes.
so many
So
times.
we do research. It is through research. We go to the community. We do regular surveys like the Uganda population-based HIV impact assessment, like the other one, we call it the Uganda demographic health survey. It's a countrywide assessment.
And people open up.
People open up, of course. They tell
Okay.
us 10, last year I had 10 multiple sexual
Continue with the bad news.
No, I think that's enough for the bad news. So we're seeing people are becoming lax when it comes to condom use. Because our message for HIV prevention is that if you are no longer abstaining, which means you have a sexual partner, stay faithful to one sexual partner who's HIV status, you know. If you cannot afford that, if you must engage in
With the
extramarital
number
affairs,
of them.
remember to use a condom. What is surprising is that we see that married men and married women, when they engage in extramarital
Elsewhere.
affairs, they do not use condom. 30 to 34 to 39 age group, I can use them as example. Only 10% of women who engage in extramarital affairs remember to use a condom. 10%. Only 9% of men in that age bracket remember to use a condom when they engage in extramarital affair. It's quite shameful. Consequently, we see that as people grow older, the highest HIV prevalence is among married men. Men, mature men between the age of 44 to 49. The highest HIV prevalence among women is among women in the same bracket, 45 to 49 and 35 to 39. You would expect these to be married and settled. But as I have told you, we see that our behaviors are becoming risky. Married men and married women are engaging in extramarital affairs. When they engage in extramarital affairs, only
None of them
10%
Carry a condom on
of
them.
those who engage in extramarital affairs bother to use a condom, which is a bit worrying.
So we have good news
Yes.
that the number is at least not that too much.
The
If it
num-
is 1 point something,
The number of people living with HIV?
Yes.
1.4 million people are very many.
okay, fine, there are very many, but compared to 40 million, probably we may say we only need to do more to save more. Then, the other good news is that 90% of these are on drugs,
Yeah.
and the drugs are doing a lot to stop
Yeah.
the spread.
Yeah.
Then the bad news is about those people who don't carry a condom on them,
Yeah.
the people that do not know about the
Total
disease,
people were
even
not.
up to now,
50%.
since the 1970s when it became
Absolutely.
known
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
country.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, let's start with what explains the good news. Why do you think we have, what do you think explains the 1.4 million? Let's start from there.
What do you mean?
The 1.4 million, how have they ended up positive?
The 1.4 million?
Yes.
That is an interesting question. That one is difficult because in Uganda, we say that our main mode of HIV transmission is heterosexual. It is through sex between man and woman.
Yes.
That is more than 80% of all HIV transmission. So most of the people we see who are HIV positive do engage in sex with somebody who was HIV positive. The other significant mode of HIV transmission has been what we call vertical, from mother to children to baby, during pregnancy, during delivery, or during breastfeeding. HIV has been here for a long time. It was first discovered in 1980, which means that children who were born with HIV in 1980 are now old men and women. And they are engaging in sexual relationships now. So there is a significant number of people who contracted HIV from their parents. But we have other smaller transmission. There are people who inject drugs, you are aware. That's what they call it in Uganda. They are there, but they're a small proportion. And we also here, we know that there are a smaller community of men who engage in relationships with fellow men, but they're a smaller proportion of our problem.
Yes.
So it's mainly heterosexual intercourse with somebody whose HIV status they do not know. That's how we get 1.4 million. And now the number has been growing. Reason is that we started an HIV treatment program, which means now people who are HIV positive are healthy. So when we get new infections every year, they add on the people who are already there.
Okay.
So 1.4 is an accumulated total. People who are HIV are living a normal life like other people, but every year we have new HIV infection. As an example, last year, 53,000 people contracted HIV. Last year alone, 53,000 is a big number of people. Some districts in Uganda have a population of 53,000.
Yes.
So you can imagine the whole 53,000, a whole district contracting HIV. This has an implication.
And you are talking about people that have gone to the hospital and tested.
Yes. 53,000, not necessarily tested, but we have our own way of scientifically establishing that we have a total of 53,000 people in Uganda who have HIV, who contracted HIV.
An estimate or a confirmed total?
No estimate, but a scientifically proven methodology of saying we know. Even the 1.4 million, it's a scientifically proven methodology that we use. So we sample the whole country, take samples, and use standard formulas to come up with this number. So 53,000, I was saying, is a big number because that is more than some districts. The population of some districts is not even 53,000. Remember, HIV, when you contract HIV, it's a chronic disease. There's no reversal. It can only add. So if one district contracts in 1 year or two districts, then the other two districts, then eventually we stand the risk of having the whole of Uganda.
Yes.
So having the whole of Uganda with HIV is not a scenario we can afford. Even a tenth of Uganda. Because the cost of treating one person is around $80 per year. The average health expenditure of our country per person is almost half that amount of money. So which means each person who contracts HIV needs your budget allocation for treatment for your health for a whole year and mine to add it to him for him to afford the medicine he gets for ARVs. That is the situation we cannot afford, and that's why as the head of HIV prevention, I always call on people, especially young people. There is a story, a tale that I hear about.
Just a minute, doctor.
Yeah.
What do you think now explains this? Okay, we have these numbers, and you have broken it down very well.
Yeah.
The other issue you talked about now on the bad news side was the information gap.
Yes.
That actually, since the 80s, there are people who do not have enough information or even little information about HIV AIDS.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's the biggest cause, the biggest factor for the 1.4 million and the 53,000 that we saw last year? And as the prevention unit,
Okay,
What
I
should we do
understand your
for you
question.
as a whole group?
So, people contracting HIV, there are several factors that lead our people to contract HIV. One of them is ignorance, of course, not having enough information. I have told you around 50% of our population do not have enough information to make the right decision to protect themselves.
Why, doctor?
Even when you go to class and teach at school, not all students get 100. So even if we teach, there are people who will misunderstand. There are people who will be confused by somebody else preaching another rumor. There are people who will be swayed away by some myth somewhere being spread. So it's difficult to get people.
Yes, but if you look at the example of education that you brought,
Yeah.
during our days, actually, those of us who sat for PLE and those other papers some time back, there's a way we look at UDEB exams today that you'll find a school having first grades of all the 100 pupils that sat.
Yeah.
That means, in my view, there is a way teachers have realized on how to prepare all the children and have at least all of them pass.
Yeah.
For over 30 years now.
Yeah.
How come we have not adopted methods that can drive information effectively to at least 90% of all Ugandans to get to know about this big problem of HIV?
There is a problem
That
here.
almost 50% of the people, like you said,
Yeah.
are
Do not
green
have-
about this.
They don't have accurate, complete
How
information.
have we failed to have measures that can really drive the information?
There are challenges, of course. How would you mobilize an adult man down in Kayunga who wakes up and goes to drink beer in the morning, and that is his lifestyle for the rest of his life until he dies? Where do you find him to educate him? Such a man who wakes up and goes to the bar in the morning, how do you educate his head really to get to know? So there are such challenges, societal challenges, that make it impossible to get everybody in our country to be at the same level of knowledge when it comes to HIV and HIV prevention. But there are other factors that lead people to contract HIV.
Tell us.
One of the other factors is violence. Did you know that young women are workers within the city? These are adolescent girls below the age of 18. I am telling you, I cried when I interfaced with young girls. There were so many, number one. And they told me they were just representatives of the many young girls who are selling sex within the city. In technical terms, we don't recognize such girls as sex workers. We call them exploited sexual minors, sexually exploited minors. They told me, when they tell you their story, what pushed them into this work is because the person they were staying with was sexually abusing them. So they ran away from home to nowhere. And it comes down when you listen to their story, all of them. We gave many of them a chance to talk to us. Tell us your story. How did you end up in this? You're still so young. Each one of them tells a story that we can summarize it into one: violence. Society connives to push a young woman into circumstances that she's not proud of. Many of them, as they told their story, they wept, and you could also feel your breakdown. Sexual violence is one way of how girls, most especially girls, even boys, end up contracting HIV. You're so helpless, you have gone to stay with your uncle so that he can pay for your school fees. You're 13 years old. This man is forcing you into sex. These are real tales that people tell us. There are so many other factors that people will tell you. Women will tell you, married women, that my husband is promiscuous. I have nothing. If I try to talk to him, he'll beat me up. I just stay quiet. So there are so many contextual factors that connive to spread HIV. So in our HIV response, we do not just address the individual behaviors of individuals. We also address other factors beyond the control of an individual that push a person into a corner that he has no choice, that push a young woman, like the women I've just talked about, to end up selling sex. These young sex workers, as they talked to me, they told me, men don't like using condoms. I'm like, men, even when they are having relationships, sex with you, they have found on the road, they don't use condoms. They say they don't. They deceive us, they end up raping us. So you get confused. You have bought a sex worker on the road. You know she is a sex worker, and you are not bothered. You don't want to use a condom. So some of these things are a bit challenging, but as the HIV response in the country, we cannot give up. We try to empower the young women.
How? Because I'm looking at a situation of our ordinary people that you gave, a picture that you gave of a man in the village who has degenerated to that level of being in a bar at 8 a.m. And when you go to the villages, you really see them. But if even where they sit on the TV as they watch in the bar, some information is running. Some information is running every after 5 or 10 minutes.
I don't
At
think
least
that
it
is
runs, it does something in their mind.
I think that is a bar in Kampala, but the bar in the village is in a backyard somewhere. There's no TV.
Fine, but there will be some channel of information. How much have you used the channels, the chains of leadership to the village?
That is what I was talking about. I was saying that one of the things that is not going well with the response is that the troops, the people who helped in the early 90s, spread the message, and it worked. The community leaders almost shouted HIV out of the country.
Yes.
By late 1980s, early 1990s, the HIV prevalence in our country was as high as 18%.
Yes.
18 people for every 100 people had HIV. But by early 2005, it had dropped almost 6%.
So did we relax?
We had not started ARVs, or if they had started, they had still a very small scale.
It was still at almost a pilot level.
By 2005, I don't think we had more than 20,000.
So how much are you
there.
engaging religious leaders? How much are you engaging and involving these structures from LC5 down to LC1 to see that at least everybody
there is a challenge.
Says something about this?
There is a challenge. The president of Uganda recently launched a campaign called the Presidential Fast Track Initiative to End AIDS as a public health by 2030. Part of that campaign is to call upon leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, cultural leaders, religious leaders, that let us engage as we did in the past. There is precedent, because when we engaged and sensitized the people and shouted at AIDS,
results were
we almost
glaring.
shouted out, HIV was disappearing. Can we re-engage? So we are starting to see momentum. People are re-engaging. But I'm telling you, there's still some little complacency. Recently, I will give you an example. I went to one of the churches I attended in Kampala. There was a youth camp. It was a holiday. So they announced in church that we shall have around 1,000 youth at a youth camp somewhere for like 3 days, teaching them on youth and preaching and whatnot.
So you saw an opportunity?
I saw an opportunity. I went to the church leader. I said, Reverend, to our national response now, youth are key. We find youth are so vulnerable. We want 20 minutes as Uganda AIDS Commission to address the youth that you are congregating somewhere. Give us 20 minutes. Youth are ignorant about HIV. They told me we'll get back to you. I have never received a call. So people have become so complacent. They assume people know, yet they don't know. So there's complacency, but as I've told you, the president is mobilizing that we engage gear again and start shouting at AIDS.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That Reverend, if you are watching, you will not go to heaven. I'm sorry for saying so, but these are the structures that we really have to use to see that everybody gets the information that they need to save their lives. We're taking a very short break. On return, we're going to see why the young people are so much at the forefront of this year's arrangement of the World AIDS Day 2019, because we see the theme actually has subject as the young people. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not go anywhere. Just get that cup of tea and come wait for the second segment.
Enjoy instant international money transfers without borders on Airtel Money today. Receive money today from East Africa, South Africa, Europe, Middle East, and America directly to your phone. To receive money on Airtel, the sender from these countries can visit their preferred money agent, mobile app, or website and directly remit it to a selected Airtel Money number. Receiving money is free of charge. You can also send money from Uganda to friends and family in Rwanda, Tanzania, and Malawi. Dial *185*1#. Select international transfer to get started.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Inspirational moment with Pastor Jackson Senyonga of Christian Life Church,
The spirit
Kampala.
of poverty convinces you that your biggest win is when you don't just lose your life. Kirungi nti oli mulamu.
Yes, it's okay.
Naye olina okuba omulamu ng'ate weeyagala ne ssente olina n'abantu obayamba, olina ne dreams n'abaana bo bakweyanyumiririzaamu n'ebintu obisobola mu linnya lya
But
Yesu.
you have to have life and significance and have an impact in your life and the lives of others.
Naye abasinga ku ffe,
But most of us,
maybe si wano,
maybe not
abantu
here.
owuliriza eyo,
People who are listening,
setaani akumatiza
that devil
nti
convinces you.
kasita olina obulamu
As long as you're breathing,
wadde obuyiseemu okaaba
though you're crying,
ng'onyigirizibwa,
you're oppressed.
abafudde si bangi,
There are many who have died
kasita
anyway.
okyaliwo,
As long as you're still alive,
abali ku bitanda si bangi,
there are many who are
kati
bedridden.
otudde ku katebe
For
awo.
you, you're sitting there.
Kankubuulire,
Let me tell you,
obulamu
life
ntandikwa
is a beginning
so si
capital.
kusembayo.
Theo Tours and Travel presents Namadu Festival, the first and ever Bagwere Cultural Festival. Have you heard of the tally of the 7 drums? Come witness the passion for culture and the uniqueness of the Bagwere on the 8th of December 2019 here in Kampala at Katikati Grounds. Come feast on Magiru and Owita as we dance away to the Kogo and Namadu at the first and ever Namadu Festival. Entrance is 10,000 and students 5,000 shillings only, and a table of 5 goes for only 200,000. Bagwere, our culture, our pride. Proudly sponsored by UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
Omweso gwatunda ayolesa Christmas 2019 guguno gugguse ku kisawe kya Nakivubo Bulu Primary School. Jangu wekwata ekifo kyo amangu ddala w'onootundira ebyamaguzi byo ate ono mu gatego gw'ekibuga Kampala ng'ennaku z'omwezi 19 Desemba okutuusa nga 23 Desemba guwagiddwa UBC TV, Pepsi Cola n'abanguka mu byefuna ku Star TV emunyenye y'eggwanga.
I know you're high and you wanna get down tonight. You sippy Henny in the club and it feels so right.
Weekulakulanye oyita mu talenti ey'okuzina eno yeyokka gurupu ekyasinze okuzina amazina mu Uganda nga bali wamu ne Hustlers Dreams Promotions ogenda ne Star TV. Ubuntu oyinza otya okuba omusanyufu nga bala tebali bannayuganda bali mu Pearl of Africa okera buli muzadde ayagala omwana we agende mu maaso era ng'okulakulana kw'omwana lyessanyu ly'omuzadde. Ndi muzadde nawe oli muzadde ate omulala ojja kuba omuzadde. Jangu onyumirwa amazina okuva mu region zonna mu Uganda. Lekera okuleetera abavubuka balina talenti okuzina obwavu mujja benyumirizaamu nga balina kye balinawo mu dance competitions. Gamba mukwano gagambe mukwano gwe tutunulidde bavubuka. Ubuntu
Let's make love tonight. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Got to do it right. I feel you. Go tonight.
His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni will on the 4th of December 2019 lead Uganda in a walk against corruption. The State House Anti-Corruption Unit will be celebrating 1 year of fighting corruption. The President will be joined by the Right Honorable Speaker, His Lordship the Chief Justice, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, other government officials, traditional and civil society leaders. Themed A Corruption-Free Uganda. It starts with me. The walk will start at 8 a.m. from the Constitutional Square to Kololo Airstrip. The Chief Walker, His Excellency General Yoweri Museveni, invites Ugandans passionate about ending corruption now to join him and other government officials in the walk of reaffirmation in the fight against corruption. Let's continue fighting corruption together.
Yes, welcome back from the break. You're still watching UBC TV, and we have a special talk show dedicated to the fight against the HIV/AIDS scourge in this country. My guest is Dr. Dan Byamukama. He's from the Uganda AIDS Commission, and there he heads the HIV prevention team. We have shared a number of things. There is good news and bad news, and we have looked at what really explains whatever information he has given us, the prevalence rates and things like that. But there was something that came out so much to do with information, and we agreed with him that there are some gaps there. Doctor, so what plans are there to cover the information gap, at least to try to have that Ugandans really, almost some good percentage, if not all of us, get to know about this problem and how it can be fought, how we can have the prevention? Is it the fear that has disappeared amongst us? Because when an Ebola alert in Uganda, everybody is on alert and everyone is scared. So have we lost the fear? Is it compliance, like you said? Anyway, what are you planning as government to see that the information gap is covered and everybody knows what to do?
Thank you. As I said earlier, I think I must have hinted on this. In 2017, June, the president is the chief fighter in the HIV response. There are some fights he has left for other people, but for HIV, he is the champion. He is the commander. So in 2017, he launched the Presidential Fast Track Initiative. And together with that Fast Track Initiative, he launched a message handbook with all the messages that people should know. And his plan or his intention was to make sure all the leaders that worked with him in the early 1990s, religious leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, get this booklet and get back to work. So we believe there is a political will now to mobilize community leaders and all channels where information can be passed to reach the people. But there is still complacency. There's still some work to do to really remind the people, to motivate the people. I've told you the example of the church leader here in Kampala, who was so reluctant to have Uganda AIDS Commission receive 20 minutes to talk to an audience of almost 1,000 youth, more than 1,000 youth, who had gathered somewhere for 3 days. Reason
so absurd.
Maybe they know. But from our research, we find that young people are so ignorant about HIV, extremely ignorant. For us, when we were growing up, we would physically see people who had AIDS. We were inspired to find out how to protect ourselves even without waiting. But this one, the young generation now are not aware. They have not seen anybody with HIV.
There are so many.
They are so ignorant. Now, the other challenge is that there are so many. Our population is big down there at the base, the lower ages. So as they grow up, we shall have more ignorant people, and it has consequences. It has consequences that we may see resurgence in HIV spread because there are many, because they are ignorant. But the Presidential Fast Track Initiative, again, prioritizes young people. It has already acknowledged that risk. There are so many, they are ignorant, and the results are already seen. We're seeing that young people, especially adolescent girls and young women, are disproportionately affected by HIV. So part of the national campaign, the key national campaign to end AIDS by 2030, focuses on interventions to address the risk of young people, to fill in the gap.
So with the president coming in, it will smoothen your path to get these reverends, to get the structures of all the leadership levels in this country.
Yes.
And so what are you going to do with them? Because the president will help you get to them.
Yes, I've told you, we have prepared a message handbook to help these people, the church leader, what messages should get out to the people. So that on average, at least somebody goes to church. If they are not going to church, they attend an LC meeting. If they don't go for an LC meeting, they go to funeral. But as I said, we're still seeing complacency. The president needs to drum up further, I think he will do that if he comes for World AIDS Day. I know he's good at doing this, to get the leaders to really shake up and get back to work as they did in the 1990s. Even when he has launched the campaign, we see a few leaders are catching the fire. Some are still reluctantly coming on board, but would wish, if we are to get our target of ending AIDS by 2030, we would want all leaders. The good thing is that most of the leaders now saw what the old leaders did in the 1990s. We would want to get back to that level and even surpass it further. Because those leaders, by their performance, they reduced the prevalence from 18 to like 6%. If we are to get it to zero, the leaders of today must perform beyond the leaders of the 90s, how they performed. So the challenge is big, and we are calling upon leaders, take up your tools, let's go to work. We must end AIDS, because we cannot afford to treat every Ugandan with HIV treatment. The government does not have that money.
Your brothers and sisters in this fight, in the civil society, how would you look at the way they are, their contribution? How would you describe their contribution?
Personally, I like the contribution of civil society. Number one, civil society innovatively raise resources. The government of Uganda does not have enough money to reach every corner.
Yes.
But civil society organizations, through partnerships, they know how to identify where the philanthropist is and write proposals, spend the whole night writing a proposal to secure some funds to come and help your community. So I think their work supports the government's work. Commendable.
How are you involving them in your initiatives? I want us just to have a second on that.
I would want to give you an example. At Uganda AIDS Commission, one of our mandate is to raise resources for the national HIV response. So one of the key resources that we use for the national HIV response is called the Global Fund. The Global Fund for HIV and malaria and TB. I would want to tell you that high level decision-making body has almost more than 60% representative on the high coordinating body of the Global Fund, which is one of the main sources of the HIV funds in the country. There are civil society organizations, civil society players present here. They are key to making decisions, to planning and prioritizing, and even to decide where the resources go. So key civil society is actively engaged. For us in the HIV response, we appreciate their contribution. They reach communities where we cannot easily reach. If we have a hospital, I was in Karamoja recently, I found that actually a hospital, many women fail to deliver from hospital because the hospitals are actually very far from where they live.
True.
Civil society has a way of innovatively taking the services to people. And they raise some of these funds through their own initiative, spending sleepless nights, writing proposals, corresponding with donors. So as Uganda AIDS Commission, we appreciate the role of our civil society partners play in advocacy, in innovation, in taking the services.
We have talked about the young people, and you said how the president is looking at them and almost everyone.
Yeah.
So I'll not ask you about how you're handling them, but the only thing I would want to know, what do you think is their role in this fight? It was my topic last week with some guests here, but you are now the man yourself, the horse's mouth actually. In your arrangements as the Uganda AIDS Commission and government entirely, what do you think is our role as the young people in this country to ensure we have no HIV totally?
You have several roles. Number one, you have roles as individuals, and you have roles as a group, as young people. And I will elaborate. As individuals, you have a duty to get to know how not to transmit HIV or how not to contract HIV. HIV prevention is an individual responsibility. Eventually, you have to make the decision to do what you have been told to avoid contracting HIV. So they have individual roles to make sure they do not contract HIV. Two, they have roles
to guard themselves. That is the first.
I have had
primary core role.
The most unfortunate thing that I would want to address at this show is that I've heard that young people claim, especially young women, they do not fear HIV, they fear pregnancy.
Somebody told it to me last Friday.
It's a common joke, but such jokes, many young people actually take it and fall to this. But I would want to talk to the young person outside there listening. HIV treatment is not easy. It's not food. If you remember the number of times the doctor has given you medication, even a single dose for 5 days, and how difficult it was to adhere to the doctor's prescription for 5 days. So taking that medication for the rest of your life is quite cumbersome. Secondly, most of the treatment we use in Uganda is given to us. It's donor money. It is from the US government, it's from the Global Fund. So we cannot afford to add another person on our HIV treatment list. I often tell people that we do not have enough chairs to seat every person in Uganda if we are all to contract HIV. So our main responsibility is not to contract HIV, because you never know. What if Donald Trump tomorrow said, I no longer want to send money to Uganda? He is a key sponsor to our HIV response.
Actually, to me, my worry would be, because Donald Trump may say no, but Macron may say yes, in a way. But somebody losing their life at the age of 20.
No, they're saying there is treatment. Indeed, it's true there is treatment. When you take treatment, you're healthy. You live normally. But there's a risk that HIV is a chronic illness. Once you have it, you have it. It will never be reversed. So we cannot put every Ugandan on treatment. We are already stressed. We do not want any other person added on the list. So we would want young people that fantasy that there is treatment. This treatment is provided by somebody outside there. You cannot afford to risk, because he can decide to change his mind anytime. Sure. So don't wish to join the list of people who line up at the hospital to get medication, because this medication at one time they may tell you it's not enough.
Doctor, you're the best person to have information about this. It was a rumor, it even circulated. What's the fact about somebody ever having come up with success about finding the cure of HIV?
Currently, there's no cure for HIV. No accessible cure. There are some experiments which have been done, very scientific, invasive procedures, which cannot be performed in Uganda.
But they're still just in pipelines.
There is a procedure. No, it has. We are talking about like 2 people who have ever been cured of AIDS through a procedure. We call it bone marrow transplant. We usually do bone marrow transplant here for people who develop cancer of blood. It costs more than $1 billion Ugandan shillings per person. So that is not a treatment that is accessible, that you are thinking of scaling up globally.
$1 billion is a budget of 2 districts here.
Yes, exactly. Every day, people
let us not even discuss that. So there is no cure.
So
let us take it at that. Okay. Let us wind up with the discussion about the day itself, World AIDS Day 2019. Yes, we have had this day ever since we got to know almost about this disease. What is so special about the edition of 2019?
It is a World AIDS Day like others.
Yes.
But this World AIDS Day, it will be preceded by a special lecture. So on Friday, the day after tomorrow, at Imperial Royal Hotel, invited people from all over the country will gather at Imperial Royal Hotel for a keynote lecture. We call it a Fidel Taya Memorial Lecture. This lecture will focus on how shall we fund, how shall we buy the ARVs that people talk about after 2020.
Okay.
Why is this important? Is that because most of the donors who are supporting us with the HIV response are showing that they may not give us their money after 2020. It's up to us as a government to find our own means to fund the HIV response. That's why I call upon the young people who are bathing in the myth that they don't fear they fear only pregnancy, not HIV, because they are ARVs. No, we are already shaking, because the people who are buying us the ARVs are saying, start thinking of buying your people the ARVs. And that lecture will be about that. We have invited key dignitaries, so we would want people to pay attention. I think it will be live broadcast. We would want people to pay attention and listen to us. After that, on the 1st of December,
that will be on Sunday.
1st of December.
Yes.
But yes, we shall have our usual World AIDS Day. This time it will be in Kayunga district. We hope to host our president, the key champion in the HIV fight, as the guest of honor, to still talk to the people about the progress we have made and how we want to get to 2030.
Okay.
We have chosen Kayunga because it has a high HIV prevalence. There are so many populations who are still at high risk of contracting HIV.
In Kayunga district.
In Kayunga.
Tell us about the theme. It sounds to have the young people at the forefront. As we wind up, they're telling me you have just 2 minutes to leave this site. Tell us about the theme.
The theme remains engaging young people. Engaging young people to champion the end of new HIV infection. Number one, young people we notice, especially young women, at a high risk of contracting HIV. We would want them to play a part to make sure they are no longer as vulnerable. They are disproportionately affected. Number two, young people are so many. If there is a risk in young people, it easily multiplies. Number three, if really we are going to see an end to the AIDS epidemic, it is not the soldiers who are senior in positions that are going to usher it in. It's young people who will usher in it. So we would want to prepare them. We don't want them to squander it. We would want them to participate in ushering in an end to the HIV epidemic. And we believe the young people will give it to us. By 2030, we shall live freely with no HIV in Uganda.
So this year, it's them that we are focusing on.
Young people, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Biamuka Madan, the head of prevention of HIV at the Uganda AIDS Commission. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
The young people there, 2019 World AIDS Day, the focus is on you entirely. Why? You are the future of this country. If you're safe, then Uganda will have no HIV patients tomorrow. It's not only the young person, there is also care for you who is already sick or infected and whoever has a life because you are a candidate. So, let us pay attention and get to know whatever we have to do. The biggest problem is that many of us don't know. But I think it is also a problem brought up by our choice of what we listen to. We should give and pay attention to what is of use to our minds and our lives. We shall know what to do. My name is Michael Jordan Bukoma. Rodo Ngozi is ready with the news. Let us give you room to watch. Thank you so much for watching. Happy World AIDS Day. I don't mean we should celebrate it, but it's so much to do with reflection. Doctor, thank you so much for coming and whatever we have shared.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Introducing the new itel P15 smartphone with free 1GB Airtel data every month for 3 months. Enjoy unique features like the big memory, 4000 mAh big battery, 5-inch HD screen, and the fingerprint sensor. Dial *175*9# to activate free 1GB Airtel data every month for 3 months. Get yours at the nearest itel branded shop. itel, in partnership with Airtel, the smartphone network. Start your holiday in style and be part of the grand family party organized by your very own Eseza Mutokana, a known children entertainer and mother. It will be fun, it will be exciting, it will be memorable with lots of prizes to be won. It's going to be the best of the children's end of year party on the 1st of December 2019 in the UBC Gardens, hosted by Eseza Mutokana. Lots of entertainment including live performances from Uganda's finest, Fresh Kid, Pastor Wilson Bugembe, Kapiripiti.
Yagoba tegeza ngenaku z'omwezi nga lumu December tugenda beera ku UBC Gardens abato mujje tugalewo omwaka.
Ghetto Kids.
We are the